All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started?
There we go. Okay.
16 of us here. So I want to welcome everybody to this breakout session on the Agriculture and Food System Education Transformation Project that's been underway for the last, 18, 19 months now at Vermont Tech. We have a ways to go, but we've been making some really good progress, and we thought it would be really helpful to update members of the network about this effort, because we really need all of your help. We need to substantially increase enrollment at Vermont Tech in the Ag and Food program there. And so as we get closer to the end of this conversation with you in the next hour and a half or so, we're going to be definitely hoping that you're going to feel inspired and wanting to help us with recruitment for future student classes. So underway here. What we'd like to accomplish during the course of this session is we're going to start off by hearing from you about why you selected this breakout session, just get a little sense of who's in the room and what your interests are. And then we'll walk through the process that we've used over the last 18 months in an effort to transform Vermont Tech's Ag and Food Education program. We have plenty of time for question and answers, and we'll then have some time to hear from you and try to actually get your input and your feedback before a few closing remarks. And I want to just really thank President Pat Moulton for being here with us. She has been a tremendous leader at Vermont Tech and totally embraced this project, this transformation effort when we first brought it to her as a need. And Molly Willard, who's at Vermont Tech and both teaches as well as is helping to really keep moving this whole transformation process at Vermont Tech, and Regina Beidler, who is at Organic Valley and was one of the co-chairs of the transformation process, along with Louise Calderwood, who is not here today, but she and Regina were the main leads on this process. And Regina, Louise, and I met weekly with Pat for the last 18 months to be able to really try to guide this transformation process. So we're excited to share that with you. But first off, let's first hear, I'm going to stop my share here, see who's in the room. And would just really love to do a quick go-around of maybe indicate who you are and why did you choose this session, and what's of interest to you with learning about about Vermont Tech and our program. So maybe Kristen, start us off.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see so many friendly faces that I haven't seen in such a long time. I run and direct the program at St. Michael's College for our farm Center for the Environment. We are an active market farm, and we focus on the sort of education and workforce development within the program itself. And the program is small and intensive. There's a huge demand for the program, although the intensive nature of running the program and farming precludes the number of students to be involved. So interested in what scaling up might look like, what it looks like for Vermont Tech, as well as degrees that you're associating with the program. We've got a minor in the pipeline for farm and food connected to our environmental studies and science majors. So lots of parallel development, different scale, different type of farming, different student population, but we too are in need of students. So kind of looking at overlapping possibilities and collaborative opportunities.
Great, thanks, Kristen. Dave Martin, how about you? Why'd you show up today? You're on mute, sir.
There you go. Yeah, one of my hats is the president of the Vermont Farm Show, and the Vermont Farm Show in its current form has been around since 1957. And Vermont agriculture has changed a lot since 1957. And I remember the first time I looked at the description of the Vermont Tech 2+2 program, and I thought, wow, it was like it was really impressive. And the farm show has provided significant support to the 2+2 program. And we're still committed to it, and also committed to supporting agriculture in Vermont in general. And like I said earlier, agriculture is changing. So that's why I'm sort of interested in these potential changes to Vermont Tech.
Great, thank
And
you.
Dave, we're so grateful for your support of the 2+2 program. So thank you for that.
Okay, yeah.
So Hilary.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hilary Bailey. I'm the Clearinghouse Director at Salvation Farms. I'm new to Vermont. I just moved here in June. So I'm just kind of getting familiar with what the initiatives are and trying to find ways that Salvation Farms can engage with people on the farm for cleaning, and also engage with them in like minimal processing of Vermont farm produce.
Great, thank you. Sarah Danley.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Danley. I'm the Farm to Plate Network Manager at VSJF. I was involved in one of the task forces very early on in this project and haven't really been involved since. So I'm really excited to learn more about the end results. And also, I am also involved in a local land access initiative. And yesterday I got to be in a really nice breakout room about that with Regina. And we were chatting about how to tie together the pieces so that educational initiatives can feed into land access initiatives. And we are very near VTC, so I'm excited about that.
Great, thanks so much. Julia.
Morning, everyone. My name is Julia Shire. I work at the Agency of Agriculture in a kind of liaison position with commerce and community development. Basically, in any conversation about ag or ag businesses, there's this question of the workforce and trainings and kind of all of that world. So just wanting to learn more about what the current conversations and initiatives are.
Great. Beth.
Sorry. Hello, I'm one of the owners of Maple Wind Farm in Richmond, and we are a diversified livestock operation along with a USDA poultry processing plant. It is one of our biggest challenges is labor, finding good folks that want to be a part of the work with integrity on farms. And in the past, I've actually come to a Vermont Tech class and done presentations, and that was proved to be not very fruitful. And I just want to know a little bit more about how maybe the program will be changing, and if this would be a conduit for young people to get into our sector of agriculture. Thank you.
Great. Okay, Christine Gall there.
Hi folks, my name is Christine. I work with Kristen over at St. Michael's with our farm and food program. I'm the new assistant manager. I joined kind of late summer, and we'll be working a lot with our students, teaching some of our classes, supervising our interns that work on the farm. And whether we have those interns or students, a lot of the kind of learning that they're doing also involves this just workforce development component. And we really hope that there will be some career outcomes for our students, and that the training that they undergo and the learning that they undergo when they're part of our program, that they'll be able to, plug into the farm and food industry here in Vermont, and that we can help contribute to that. And so as someone who's kind of new to working with this sort of work at the higher ed spectrum, I'm curious to hear about other programs and what's going on, and how we can either learn from each other or even work together to build more resilient and impactful programs.
Great, thank you so much. For those of you who have joined late, we're just doing very brief introductions, name and where you're from, and then why it was that you decided to come to this breakout session, just so that we have a little bit of the lay of the land of who you all are. So I'm going to go to Allison Eastman next.
Good morning, Allison Eastman. I work at the Agency of Ag, Food and Markets, and interested in this conversation, as there's likely not a day that goes by that we don't have conversations around labor force, work-based learning, leading into careers, and what the 21st century education could look like. So we recently had a meeting with Pat and her staff at VTC, and interested to listen to what others in the network have to offer. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Norwich Farm Creamery.
Hi, thank you. I'm Chris Gray, and together with my wife, Laura Brown, we operate Norwich Farm Creamery here in Norwich, Vermont, which is a property owned by Vermont Technical College. Thank you.
Thank you. Callie Hastings.
Good morning. I am calling in from Brookfield, just up from Randolph, and a couple reasons I'm here. I am local to here, grew up here, spent a lot of time removing gum from underneath desks at VTC College as a job when I was young. So I have the personal connection here, but also run a business with my family in Brookfield called Fat Toad Farm. And we've been part of some of the info sessions along the way of sharing different needs of farm and food businesses. And then also I'm here in my role as program manager for the Vermont Farm and Forest Viability Program. And just trying to follow along with the development of what VTC is doing and how it fits into all the work that we do with farm and forest businesses in Vermont to help support them as they look for people to work on their farms and forest businesses.
Thank you so much. Andy Wood.
Good morning. Andy Wood, I'm a loan officer at the Vermont Economic Development Authority, or VEDA. And I'm a graduate of the VTC program as part of the 2+2 program. And I was involved on one of the working groups for this project. And I also serve on the 2+2 steering committee.
Thanks. Bill Cavanagh.
Hi, I'm Bill Cavanagh. This is Ewan. I work at NOFA. I'm a farm business advisor. I'm here because I just love Vermont tech, and I think technical education is a really important part of our agricultural system. I also teach the meat cutting short course for Vermont Tech, so shout out to that.
Great, thanks. Dan Keaney.
Good morning, I'm Daniel Keaney. I work at the Center for an Ag Economy in Hardwick. We run the Vermont Food Venture Center, also a business planner through the Farm Viability Program like Bill. Yeah, just interested in interesting new partners to innovate and talk about food entrepreneurship with, and definitely feeling the workforce challenges with lots of clients and our own social enterprises. So always curious about what's in the pipeline on that front. I might have to step away also, so I'm sorry, but I'll definitely watch the recording.
Okay, great. Thanks, Daniel. Nikki.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Nikki Leonard, work at the Interval Center. Very much like Bill and Daniel, a farm business planner, working at the network as well for farm viability. And working with aspiring and beginning farmers, always wanting to be up to date with these programs, to be able to refer aspiring and beginning farmers over, and the crossover, of course, with food businesses as well. And then just learning, the continued opportunities for those graduates to be able to connect with us service providers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tori.
Hey, I'm Tori Littlefield. I'm a regional planner with the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission. VTC is in our region, so that is why I'm attending this session.
Awesome. Thanks. Catherine Donovan.
Good morning, I'm Catherine Donovan. I'm with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets as the program coordinator for the Dairy Business Innovation Center. So I'm kind of here with like a more regional perspective of trying to sort of like, I focus on kind of like a 10-state region, and I have a pretty high level view of kind of what's going on in dairy across that. Not so much on the like specifics happening in Vermont, and really looking for kind of how to make some of those connections across states, opportunities for folks coming to Vermont or folks potentially graduating, and what opportunities for coordination and collaboration across state borders could be.
Great, thank you. And Jay O'Connor.
Hi, I am Jill O'Connor. I'm with Efficiency Vermont. I'm here in kind of a couple different roles. I'm obviously interested to see if there's ways with our agricultural program and our other programs that we might be able to collaborate with some of the departments at VTC and see where the industry is going, if there's areas that we can help with or anything. And I'm also local. We grew up next door to VTC, so I'm not going to lie. I'm also interested from that perspective where the college is going. A longtime supporter, graduates and everything from the college and my family. So the VTC and the other state colleges have always been near and dear to my heart. So a lot of the changes are interesting for me to learn about and see where we're expanding and growing.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And Emma Allen is on with Delaney Meeting, and she is our tech host. So if you have any issues over the course of the next hour and 10 minutes, please do message her. I think I got everybody, right? All right, and I think I'm going to go ahead and screen share and get moving through our little deck here. So one of the reasons why it's so important that Vermont Tech is going through this ag and food transformation process is because Vermont's food system is expanding, as you well know. And in a little over an hour from now, Jake is going to be revealing the 2020 local food counts number to see how much more above 14% we got in the last 3 years of Vermonters buying local food. And, I think that probably 10 years ago, on some level, some folks thought, oh, this local food thing, it's just going to be a fad and it's going to go away. But really, that's not what's happening. In fact, consumers are more and more interested in where their food comes from. They want to understand the story behind the food. They want to know who is making the food. They're much more interested in sort of understanding the sense of place of the food where it comes from. And we're seeing a lot of shifts happening even in the marketplace between what 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot more going on with farmers markets and direct to consumer. And now there's a lot more direct to retail and a lot more consumers who are expecting that when they go to restaurants or when they go into a grocery store, that they're going to have access to local food. So given that, we cannot in this state afford for Vermont Technical College to not have a robust, relevant, and very current ag and food system educational program. And if you think that Vermont's food system is growing, there's going to be some significant new initiatives happening over the next 10 years in expanding our regional food system here in New England. And again, Vermont Tech, we think, has a very important role to play in that process of training the next generation of farmers and food entrepreneurs. So if you, as I mentioned, the consumer demands and the trends are such that consumers are they want to spend their money on sustainable products. And so you take a look at some of the survey work that has been done over the past 10 years, you're seeing more and more consumers interested in actual values-based food with attributes such as grass-fed or free range, or that they come from a B Corp or such. And so these are things that we really feel like Vermont Tech students need to be aware of. Consumers are looking for foods that have these attributes. And in fact, the millennials and Gen Zers are indicating that they are willing to pay a higher price for products that are in fact having those different attributes. And so again, there's real market opportunity and that we want Vermont Tech students to be able to take advantage of when they graduate from the program. So I'm going to turn over to Pat, give a little lay of the land of why over the last 18 months have we been doing this transformation process. Go ahead, Pat.
Great, thanks, Ellen, and thank you all very much for being here this morning, and thanks for your interest. I am Pat Moulton, I'm the president at Vermont Tech, and I just want to take a second to shout out to Regina Beidler, Ellen Kaler, Louise Calderwood for their incredible leadership working with us over the last year, and also Molly Willard on our staff, who heads our Ag Institute and also does some adjunct work for us. I mean, these ladies have been working very hard, but a lot of you too, who have been in stakeholder meetings and helped us with this design. And really, why are we doing this? And the short story is, a big piece of it is declining enrollment. As you can see here, we've gone from really sort of a high in all our agricultural programs, dairy farm management, diversified ag, and a high in academic year 17-18 to as low as 22 enrolled in total in all years at the college right now. Hard to sustain an 85 head cow dairy farm on that type of revenue from students and also student participation on the farm. So declining revenue or declining enrollment also equals declining revenue, which, as this chart indicates, you'll see at the bottom, the VTC farm finances. We have been steadily losing money on the farm, but more important, on the upper chart, you'll see that when we look at the cost per student, the ag program is pretty high. It's a very high cost program. Operational costs of the farm, the administration, which is not very heavy. We have a total of 3 employees on the farm. And when you compare that to some of our other programs, which admittedly are larger, but in many cases much higher tuition, the cost per student is very, very high and unsustainable for our current agriculture operation. And while we're providing good value in that education program, it's not to enough students. And back to the enrollment, we've historically catered to farm family students and others. That the number of farm families, sadly, has dwindled. We're also seeing more diversified enrollment, students coming looking for experiences beyond dairy farm management. You want to go to the next slide, Ellen? So, and as we know from the farm to plate work, which is superb, looking at careers and pathways for students, there are a wide range of jobs. I don't need to tell all of you, you're familiar with the type of work. It's everything from on the farm to value-added processing to business operations, et cetera. So we set about, you'll go ahead, next slide's great, Ellen, thanks. When the previous chancellor had announced that thankfully a short-lived plan was to close the Vermont Tech Randolph campus, move everything to Castleton, and or move everything to Williston, there was a general concern amongst a lot of people that we would lose the asset of the Vermont Tech Ag program, which is different from what UVM offers, which is different from what Sterling and others offer. So mercifully, Ellen Kaler called me and said, hey, what if we put together a group of people who could really analyze what we could do going forward? And we had more than 40 subject matter experts from around the state, other institutions, federal, state, local partners, farmers, graduates, others who are interested in the agriculture program here. We held 11 different listening sessions with alumni, community members, faculty, staff, students, industry experts in a wide variety of agriculture areas. We did a survey, had 191 responses, asking where they saw the value and where did they think agriculture was going. And we have that combined expertise helped really guide what the program would be. We had, for example, Mark Mahaly, former dean of Vermont Law School, working with us on culture and curriculum. Philip Ackerman Leist, formerly of Sterling College, working with us on looking at other programs, and a variety of people working on everything from what are best practices elsewhere that we want to bring here, where is the market, and a great group of people doing a huge amount of financial analysis. Jed Davis from Cabot, Agrimark Cabot, not the least of which, as well as folks, our own faculty, our own financial staff involved in running the numbers to determine what was going to be cost effective for us going forward, and really try to look at beyond dairy, in addition to dairy, what else could we be looking at? Let's see, should we flip to the next slide? Yes. So in June of 2021, this advisory group of, we had a steering committee, and the input from all the experts issued a final steering committee report to me, which you'll see the web link there. It's on our website. We could also send it if you need it, to really look at how we would reinvent the ag program here at Vermont Tech. And that report has also, it contained, you'll see in a minute, recommendations, but it also contains next steps, additional research that we need to do that we're engaged in actually right now. But we'll get into a little more detail on that going forward. So I think, I kick it to you next, Regina, I believe.
Yeah, and Pat, maybe you could throw the link to the report in the chat, so make it easier for folks to get it.
I can do.
Great. All right.
Will do.
Gina, take it away.
All right, I'll just say introductorily that I do work for Organic Valley. I'm also an immediate neighbor of Vermont Tech. Our farm lives right next door for the last 24 years. My husband, who's currently in the nursing program at Vermont Tech, while he was a farmer, was also an adjunct professor in the ag program. So when we heard of the proposed closure of the campus here in Randolph, it was both very personal, and also we've had a lot of kids that we've known over the years. So wondering what would happen to ag education if this program disappeared. So what I'm going to be walking us through are the recommendations that came out of the 4 working groups that Pat just mentioned. We had the culture and curriculum team and a program model team who worked through the fall of 2020, came up with a series of recommendations that were handed off to a business case team to check the financial viability of the recommendations that were being proposed, and then a marketing and communications team understanding that it would be important to push out information about what was being proposed. So I'm just going to start by talking about this first recommendation, which, as you see at the top, is suggesting the creation of a Center for Ag and Food Entrepreneurship. The school structure at Vermont Tech right now is a series of schools. So there is a School of Agriculture, Plant and Animal Sciences, and this center would rest in that center, in that school rather. If you look around the edges, you'll see the 4 existing strengths of Vermont Tech's programs. The existing degree programs, which Pat called out, which are several associate's degrees, a diversified ag bachelor's degree, and the 2+2 program. And also the ability to access lots of other programs at Vermont Tech, which is down on the bottom right. So you'll see things like diesel tech and forestry and computer software engineering. We see those types of overlaps with food and farm systems. And also the ability, we have the campus farm, which is a real strength because it gives some hands-on environment for people to learn, and a strong continuing education program for people who are coming in as less traditional students or for shorter educational sessions at the college. And in the center of all of this, we are placing advising at the center of the learning process, because we believe if we can assist individual students in meeting their learning and professional goals, that's going to be a real strength of this program. And we know that there's a close connection to activity in the classroom and on the farm and through all their other experiences as well. The one final benefit I'll call out of having a center identified like this is it provides an easily identifiable and marketable portal. So if prospective students are looking around at programs, if they see a center and there's a center point for them to come into the process to see what's available, it'll be easier for them to see what's available to them through the program. Okay, we can go on. Oh, and then I'll just mention one more thing too, that there's an ability to strategically market, implement, assess, and continually enhance the programs that exist, and also the learning modalities, because we're seeing now that there is still traditional learning, but much more of an expectation of online and other types of courses that students are looking for. So if you look at this, the second recommendation was the creation of a centered, one associate degree called Agriculture and Food Entrepreneurship, but then 2 concentrations that students could choose from, one in dairy and animal science and one in food entrepreneurship. So as you'll see here, the proposal would be that there would be a core curriculum that all students would benefit from taking. So classes that we feel are beneficial no matter what role you take in the farm or food system, but then also the ability to specialize down into these different concentrations. And you'll see some examples of what might be included in that as we get further into the slides. We also see the ability to continue to add concentrations if additional areas of interest, or if we're seeing growing student demand for another concentration, that could be added into the future. And as you'll see too, we can put introductory courses and workshops and short course formats in this as well. So again, for people who aren't looking for an associate degree program, they would have other opportunities to engage. All right, we'll go to the next one, Ellen. This is a bit of an example of what the proposed curriculum could look like for the core education that I was just talking about. In the box at the top, you'll see the general education requirements that are required of all VTC students. So those are things that every student must take no matter what their major. And then in the box below are some courses that were suggested as general courses of a core curriculum that anybody in the food, entrepreneurship, and farm program would benefit from taking. And as you'll see, some of those would fulfill gen ed requirements as well. So these would be general courses for everyone to take before looking at their concentrations. We can go to the next one, Ellen.
It should be there. Can you see it? Yeah.
I can see it. Yep, thank you. So again, this is just an example of what the culture and curriculum team recommended could go under each of these concentrations. These are not meant to be exhaustive. There's obviously different courses that can be substituted in for pieces depending on the individual needs of the students. But as you'll see on the left under the dairy and animal science concentration, it's more focused on large livestock agriculture and would be able to continue to meet the prerequisites for the 2+2 program that has been going for many years. And then on the right, there's a food entrepreneurship concentration, which we feel would cover more diversified agriculture as well as food system training needs. We can go to the next. And as I mentioned, it's really important to us to maintain the 2+2 program. It's been a real centerpiece of an important part of the relationship between Vermont Tech and UVM for many years, and we'd like to make sure that that's maintained. So again, with the curriculum going into place, it would not change the ability, but perhaps might offer an opportunity for the 2+2 to expand into other areas in addition to dairy, where it's been up until now. And we're seeing an opportunity to expand the existing number of students and learning styles by increasing the type and number of short courses and certificates and offering additional online and hybrid learning options. J-term and summer programs would allow students the chance to learn in areas that are not covered in the regular curriculum. And we could also take advantage of the growing season where a lot of agricultural activity is taking place. Applied education is a hallmark at Vermont Tech, and if you were looking at the curriculum, the core curriculum slide, you may have noticed that there was a 15 hours of internship that was recommended as part of the learning curriculum for the 2-year associates program. We feel like that's reinforced over the 4 semesters of the associate's degree. So the first year would focus on growing basic farm and food production skills, resume and interview experience. And then the second year would place students into internships with a focus on their area of interest. And that would include a project that would be beneficial to the student's mentor and host business. And that would be in the final semester of the second year. Before we go on to the next slide, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing that influenced a little bit of how we looked at the farm, because the farm has been a really integral part of education and learning at Vermont Tech over the years. As Pat mentioned, there's a mid-sized 85 cow dairy herd, which has been the centerpiece of the farm for many, many years. And the milk is shipped conventionally from there. So students who have engaged in the program have had the opportunity to engage with that dairy herd for a long time. There's also an apple orchard and some maple production at the college, and then some smaller programs over the years around vegetable production, which are not as active at the current time. So we just wanted to spend a few minutes looking at some of these trends that are coming down the pike and then talking about how that influenced some of our recommendations about what we thought could be included at the farm for students to have interactive experience. So on this slide, this is no mystery to any of us who are following the dairy farm or dairy industry. We're seeing increased bifurcation in the size of dairies with clustering at both ends of the spectrum. And we're lucky to have a Dairy Business Innovation Center here in Vermont that's actively looking at how to support dairy businesses, including small farms who are right-sized for the Vermont geography and climate that's ideal for grass-based dairy. We'll go to the next one, Ellen. And at the same time, we're seeing an expanding demand for more diverse types of agriculture. So what is the opportunity for Vermont Tech to offer a more diverse array of on-farm experiences on the campus farm? Bill Cavanagh called out that he is working with a meat cutting course. There is a shortage of skilled meat processing workers, and it's a significant challenge for Vermont right now. And Vermont Tech has run a number of the meat processing apprenticeship programs, partnering both with the Mad River Food Hub and the Royal Butcher in Randolph. And as the meat industry continues to expand based on growing consumer demand, how can Vermont Tech play a role in expanding training and apprenticeship programs for Vermonters? I think it's impossible not to see the effects of climate change, not only in our own region, but across the country, and the impact that that is having on food availability and the movement of food across the country. So what are we doing at Vermont Tech to prepare the next generation and best practices for adapting to climate change? What are we teaching about the importance of healthy soils to increase the ability to manage higher precipitation while building and not washing away topsoil? And the question would be, could Vermont Tech become the place in the Northeast to get a hands-on education in climate adaptive farming practices? And then regenerative ag, which is something a lot of us are talking about as well. And we know there's a growing awareness about how important this is. And while researchers and modelers at UVM are exploring payment for ecosystem services funding and metric tracking models, what could Vermont Tech be doing to provide the practical, hands-on learning that puts these regenerative practices in place on farms throughout the state? So with all of these things in mind, along with what Pat had shared too around the current financial status of the farm, a group of us sat down to brainstorm all of the possibilities of what we could put in place at the farm that would financially support itself, but also give diverse experiences to kids who may want to experiment with interactions with different types of animals. I think we put 18 on the table, and those were passed off to the business case team, and they came back with a recommendation that we consider these 6 enterprises on the farm. So you'll see them in the green boxes, which would be grass-fed beef, a custom dairy heifer grazing operation, some deep-bedded hogs, vegetable production, and then the continuance of maple and the apple orchard that are already there. These recommendations, as I said, were passed to the business case team to test. And the dairy herd would be sold based on these recommendations, based on the school's ability to assure training opportunities at local farms for students who wanted to pursue education with lactating dairy animals. So Molly will talk about that soon, but that's a piece of the work right now, is to not take something away that we are not assured could be replaced by a learning experience opportunity for people who continue to want to work with lactating dairy animals. So the question is, what type of enrollment is necessary to make this program financially viable? On the yellow piece of this graph, you'll see what Pat mentioned, that the current program has only 22 students, and the current expense of that program already puts it at a net revenue loss even before this margin is added in. And the margin is amount of money that's applied to every academic program as a place to absorb the cost of non-revenue yielding staff and department assistants that helps the campus to run smoothly. The current program would need 135 students within a 2-year associate's program in order for this to be financially viable in its current state, and we don't think that that's a realistic possibility. In the blue to the right of that, it shows the expense of establishing the center that we've talked about in these recommendations and transitioning the farm from its current dairy format to a more diverse group of offerings. And this would require 125 students within the 2-year program, or with a mix of formats, courses, and offerings to make this financially viable. So as the red text at the bottom says, this is still a big climb and a huge stretch, but we feel like with these types of changes, we might be able to bring in a more diverse regional group of students who have a wider interest in farming and food system beyond the current offerings. And all of this, to make this work, is going to require a significant amount of marketing and outreach to be able to let people know what this new program looks like, much like what we're doing today. So there was a team that worked on some initial marketing and communication approaches with the current marketing team at Vermont Tech, as well as the admissions staff. And that is something that would continue to be modified, sharpened, and put in front of people, especially as the center comes to life and we're able to put more specifics into place for people to see. So that was a relatively quick run through, and we can certainly talk more about any of these recommendations after we get to the end, but Molly's going to share what's happening now.
Good morning. So I'm Molly Willard. I work at Vermont Technical College, where I head up the Ag Institute and then also teach in the Ag department. It's nice to see so many of you here today. And then I also work with many of you as I sit on the 2+2 steering committee and the Farm Show Advisory Board. So what I'm going to do with you now is take you through where we're at now. So we just did this intensive year-long planning process, as you can see from all the information Regina just gave you. And now we have these recommendations and what are we doing and sort of how are we doing it? So right now, the current status at Vermont Tech is that we have hired some part-time contractors to help with starting to implement these recommendation efforts. And so we have a contractor who has come on that is working with us to develop an internship program. And part of the work we're doing there is looking at farms that could be potential sites and food businesses that could also be potential sites. And this will be for the 4 semesters of off-campus internship learning that is new to those degrees that we're adding through the Ag transformation process. We're also seeking out additional employer partners to build CWD offerings to meet workforce needs, where we have hired a consultant that's being led by Philip Ackerman-Leiss to help with this. So we're looking at short courses and trainings that really feed the workforce. And part of that is also a meat cutting lab and program, which we currently have and operates, but looking to expand that to meet the market needs that we're seeing for that particular training right now. And then in addition, we'll be looking at creating additional short course development and offerings. So that all of that work is being done in combination and help with consultants and contractors, and also, some key stakeholders are still helping us with that process. Right now, Vermont Tech staff, faculty, and other key stakeholders are reworking the curriculum and moving it through the internal VTC process. So based on the curriculum changes that Regina laid out for you, we're now working that through our internal process. We have some consultants on board, but we're also onboarding other consultants that are going to be helping with the VTC farm and shifting the operations with new ag enterprises. We're also working on fundraising for the desired steady state to fill capacity gaps and operational needs. One of those things needed there to really get everything going is a center director. So we're working on fundraising for those pieces. We're developing outreach and marketing to increase enrollment and overall program rebranding and marketing of the programs. You can go to the next. Yeah, so, given, where we're at, how can those of you that are here today help Vermont Tech with this ag transformation? A couple things I think people could do is, one, advocate for this program's transformation overall, including funding for the CAFE model and existing state budget and workforce related bills. You could consider becoming a guest speaker, a short course training site provider, or an internship site. Also, continued support for the overall Vermont State University transformation is helpful, and helping us to spread the word with juniors and seniors in high schools and encourage them to enroll at Vermont Tech. And if any of these things resonate with you, feel free to reach out to me, M. Willard too. My email's there. And we can talk about options for helping with this process. We can go to the next slide. And one of the things, if you're on here and you're thinking about being an employer partner, Vermont Tech, we do have an employer partner program. And what this does is it's sort of a 4-step process that you can see outlined here. So the first thing is, if you are an employer, as you basically identify any Vermont Tech 2 or 4-year degree program that provides the necessary knowledge and skills that you would be seeking for in an employee. And then the next step is students are recruited with input from the employer, and students can receive a paid internship or apprenticeship with employers and may be eligible for scholarship opportunity. And then after graduation, employers provide an interview to students for job openings within the company. So this program really helps employers to have access to VTC graduates, and also helping them sort of go through these educational programs.
Molly, can you clarify, is this at this stage primarily for, say, food manufacturers as opposed to farms, but that we're wanting to gear up more towards being able to also service farms? Or
yeah, right now this is really only being utilized by manufacturing and people that employees, employers. So but this is something we're trying to look at as we're trying to look at how we're going to support the workforce needs of the ag industry and sector, is how can we develop some employer partner collaboration to support those efforts. And it might not exactly look just like this employer partner program we have now, but it could be, this is an example of something that works for the manufacturing sector, and maybe we can use this and go a little bit of a different direction as we're looking at the agricultural sector.
I would just add too that the main focus within ag is really those internship sites and the internship opportunities, and particularly paid internships, because a lot of our students, 85% of our students here are Vermonters, and a good 68% of them are Pell eligible, meaning they're coming from low to moderate income homes. So that work piece is key. But those internships have an opportunity for you to try out the student to try out you as a farmer or a manufacturer. But Molly's right. Primarily we've had manufacturers who've come and provided scholarship dollars and in addition to the internship or apprenticeship sites in the summer. And it's a real win-win for both. And Molly's has an excellent point. We can customize these relationships, but we're really looking now for where can we find internship opportunities to bring students for various business units of the curriculum that may be much shorter term. So yeah, if you're interested, we'd be happy to talk to you. But I just want to emphasize, we are still in the money raising phase and trying to get to the point where we can flip the switch to on for this. The big key for us to get started is seed funding for that cafe center director who can help us really move forward on implementation. We've got, I think, 4 or 5 different paths we're following for funding at the moment. And we need to finish up the work that Molly just described, and before we can really plunge forward in a big way. Unfortunately, Vermont Tech doesn't have any risk capital. We're not sitting in a place where we can and just go ahead and invest the dollars. So we've got to find the dollars from other sources. I'm getting my internet is stable, so I hope I'm not frozen. So
good. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Pat and Regina and Molly. And so we have a good bit of time here. So we wanted to open it up to, first off, just any questions that you have on any of the things that we presented. We're looking for, clarifying questions, or just like, I don't really understand this. That'd be great to start with. And then we'll move into more of just sort of an exchange about, does this make sense? Is this going to fill the kind of needs that we're looking for? What's your sense about the the direction that we're now in the process of moving towards in terms of meeting some of the needs and interests that you all indicated when you were doing your introductions. So just some clarifying questions first off for any of our panelists. Hilary, go ahead.
I'm still trying to like formulate my thought around this, but Salvation Farms does have a Vermont commodity program where we're going to be doing workforce development in minimally processing vegetables that we glean or buy from local farms. So I thought that might be an interesting way to engage with students potentially, even if it's through like a short course or something like that.
And Hilary, I'm just curious for what types of skills, if you were to take somebody as an intern, for example, would you want them to know how to do before they arrive?
There aren't any prerequisites for this program. Participants, we're looking at it as a holistic program, so they'd get ServSafe certification. They'd come out of it with knife skills, food process, like working in a kitchen, essentially.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Kristen, I see you've got your camera on and you look pensive. Looks like you've got something to ask.
Not really. I'm super fascinated, Ellen. You know, Molly too knows what I do and what I've been up to and how challenging the landscape is. And I can't remember which number slide it was. I think Regina was presenting, but you had the different different commodities that can be produced at VTC, maple and dairy and veg and apple as vetted by your committees, which I think is great. And I couldn't help but think about our farm as a market farm that's been in operation for 6 years and our increased production, and then also UVM's farmer training program in the summer. And then the apple orchard up at the same campus at UVM, and just looking for overlapping opportunities because of the student number that you all cited as needing for viable economics to work out for the program. This is just a huge jump. And UVM and St. Mike's pull a different clientele, a student interested in a different brand. And I don't know that we have, I'm just curious if there's enough students that can spread across all three institutions, but if we find a way to leverage what already exists and build out a sort of central Vermont regional opportunity, some of those internship goals would be hit, the student numbers would be hit. My students ask about dairy and maple and apple all the time, and there's just no capacity for that or interest for that, at our college. So I don't have much more to say than that, but those resources are in the community, and I'm wondering how that could play into kind of, frankly, the center model. We're in the middle of, I'm the director of the Center for the Environment. So looking at these collaborative social impact, career-minded workforce training programs and how that interfaces with academics and the student interest and need that exists now. The student that we have this year is very different than the student that we had 4 years ago.
Yeah. And what you're expressing, Kristen, has actually come up in the conversation over the last 18 months as well. Kate Finley-Woodruff from UVM was the lead on the communication and marketing team. So very much with an eye of, we have too many students for the amount of summer intern positions we have at our campus. Would there be opportunities to send some to Vermont Tech for a different experience? Sterling College too, with Philip Ackermanley's connection, is like, well, we know where our strengths are and we know where your strengths are. How can our students have access to be able to try things that they may not get there? So I think there is a much more, rather than competing with each other, how are we able to work together is a big question.
And leveraging those existing resources that you speak of, Kristen. I mean, let's not duplicate, let's figure out how we can leverage. I mean, we have an apple orchard, we have a sugar bush, things of that nature. And you have aspects, the market garden, et cetera, that we don't have. And I think your point's a good one in terms of how many students are there, and or how many new students could we attract through that kind of partnership and collaboration. Yep.
Well, part of it also is housed in the sort of immersive intensity that's required in agriculture, and students' capacity to degree requirements, right? And also need to work and make money in the summertime. So the need for that paid summer experience is over and above just signing up for a summer class.
Right. Yeah.
Great. Lots to explore for sure. Regina, do you want to?
I was just seeing that Beth had a comment in the chat box about why not poultry. And I'll just say, Beth, that there are no bad ideas. And I think you should take these recommendations as where we are starting from. And as the center director gets into place and the program gets on its feet, that there's going to be certainly evaluating what's the need and what's the demand. I know when we were looking at, the farm has a significant amount of grazing and hay acres. We thought having grass-based operations would be really vital for future food system needs. And from talking with people who do beef and dairy grazing heifers, the ability for those two to commingle or to be in close contact with each other works really well. So it's two enterprises that we felt would be working pretty well together. So that's why the two of them are there and why beef is present. So I don't think we have a specific answer on poultry, but I wouldn't give up hope, especially if there is an increasing demand for people who really either need a short course or need some way to integrate that into their learning.
I agree with Gina. Well said.
Yeah. Catherine Donovan, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I might have missed it. I feel like the slide that I was trying to look at was full of information. I didn't quite absorb it all in the moment, but I'm trying to kind of get a handle on, maybe it may be kind of a multi-part question, but the value add component of dairy specifically, but how much of that is sort of integrated into the program or not? And then kind of a follow-up to that of any like marketing aspects to the programming around any of this ag curriculum. Just curious on kind of like, where do the programs end? Like, what is the extent of the programs? And we've, through the Dairy Innovation Center, we've had some research is being done on kind of like distribution, and it's really honed in on that kind of like market readiness for dairy specifically, but I think everybody here knows that that's kind of across the ag sector. So just kind of curious the role that these new programs or the center could play on kind of helping fill that gap in knowledge and skills.
I know that was a frequent conversation, and the importance of marketing and value add was very much a part of the conversation. The big question is, how much should the campus and the campus farm be the be all and end all of providing that education? And how much is a core curriculum and core learning happening on the campus with then the ability to go and work with a business of some kind, with a farm, with some type of enterprise that reflects the interests of that individual student, with the hopes then of being able to get some of that very practical learning you're describing there, in addition to then having some opportunities at the campus as well. But rather than having the campus farm be all of that education, to have more partners engaged. So that's kind of a messy answer to, we don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I think that's where to feasibly create a market stand or to have, lots of other pieces to the program wasn't something that we felt like we could put into place right now. Although I will say the orchard has the capacity to deal with the public. So that's one small enterprise that would have some public facing opportunities.
Yeah, so Andy Wood was on the, sorry, Pat, did you want to jump in there?
No, I'm just going to say, not competing with the private sector, but partnering with the private sector in the education and learning, I think is where we were really focused on, Catherine, to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. So Andy Wood was on the business case development team, and one of the things that they did was and I'm hoping you're going to talk about this, Andy, was how many enterprises did you guys model for viability before we landed on the final 6 to start with?
That's a great question. I think it was 18 to 22. And that's considering that we took things like vegetables and looked at them as vegetables when individually in the discussions of vegetables, you could go a number of different ways. I think in our vegetable that ended in, it's actually kind of a wholesale scale. And then the more of a market garden would be handled, or a market garden scale would be handled in coursework. But we looked at a lot of different enterprises. There's a lot of different ways, and I think recognizing that it's a work in progress, and until it's a fluid situation, looking at, market conditions and other things, and also the expertise of whichever of what the staff will be. At one point there, when the reference to 3 staff was made, their expertise will inherently make a difference in what the college is able to do and do at a high level. With that, one of the key reasons that things like beef and dairy heifers got included relates to the existing infrastructure that we talked about. But another point that I wanted to make, which I think is relevant, is that's large ruminant animals, which is an entire class of animals that is very relevant to the state. And so we did feel that it was important for the education at Vermont Technical College that large ruminant animals were a part of that. So it was quite a process. And we don't mean to say that what we ended up with was by any means perfect, but a lot of work went into that. And I have a question.
Okay. Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you, Andy. Yes, please. What is your question?
My question is on the market research side. Is there, as we finished up our work, I was thinking that a RFP was going to be offered to do market research for the students. The reference to the number of students to make this program go was the question that we could not answer. And so is that type of market research going to be hired out and done, or where does that stand?
We do not have a current RFP out on that, Andy. That is still an outstanding question of how far we have to go, because we've been relying a lot on some of the labor market data, farm to plate data, et cetera, in terms of demand, as well as what we're hearing from employers. But that question of if we build it, will they come, is still out there. But we know we've seen a change in some of the profile of some of our students who've come, and they're looking for something, dairy plus, or they're looking for an alternate to dairy, or folks that are coming with 0 farm experience, but want to get a breadth of opportunity to decide where they want to focus. So that's still an outstanding question. In short answer is no, not at the moment, but it's still on the radar, definitely.
Okay, Kristen, go ahead.
I think it was when Catherine was speaking, just thinking about the marketing, the directed education around becoming an effective, value add narrative, the marketing around that made me think about our both our our business and our MJD degrees at St. Mike's, and made me think about kind of 2 streams of students. The St. Mike's student isn't coming to St. Mike's to farm. That's not what their families are. It's not the history that they're coming from in their families. They're coming for the liberal arts degree. They're coming for the business degree or biology degree, whatever. And they get there and they realize that they have a passion for the environment, or they have an interest in agriculture, working on the land. This shows up in our education students also. And I'm wondering if sort of that combined with the student who comes to VTC looking for agricultural opportunity kind of see these sort of mixing graphs of students where you have two cohorts of students that work together to leverage each other's interests and skills across all of these different markets. And the two programs can currently add value to each other. And for the business student, the agriculture is the value add. For the ag student, the business degree is the value add. So just sort of think about around that. Those student numbers are going to shift because you're going to end up with halves of students, but that might be an easier sell for students and families in some cases, especially those who might not know that they want to go into agriculture from the beginning. Anyway,
I think that's worth exploring for sure, Kristen, and see, those are some of the conversations we have with UVM as an example, is where can we leverage our facilities with theirs, the students who might have cross curricular stations that clearly we should be engaging with you on. So yeah, because we have, as you note, we have students who come here specifically to learn agriculture and then discover other opportunities, or vice versa, come here for another opportunity to discover ag. Our current farm manager here came with 0 ag experience, and she's a rock star. and so we want to be able to have students of all interests come and look at cross-curricular interests as well, and potentially cross-institution interest. It might be time to go back and look at the Ag Higher Ed Consortium as an example that was active 8 years ago and really kind of didn't go anywhere, but definitely worth conversation. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that, but yeah.
I think we got a hand from Joe Connor.
Yep. Hi. Actually, on that, as a kid that was a business major and always had, a little bit of ag in the background, and having a professor that actually did a lot of business and with agriculture mixed in, there's definitely, I think, a segment that's looking for that. Right now, where I am with Efficiency Vermont, we're doing a lot with horticultural and trying to find designers to help, folks construct efficient, good greenhouses, both standard structural built greenhouses, hoop houses, but also with the influx of indoor grow. That's a big segment that, we see a big need in here in Vermont. So being able to cross-reference the construction team, especially the HVAC mechanical folks, and have them learn, if there's ones that are interested in learning more about the horticultural industry or the agricultural industry in general, constructing, the barns and proper ventilation and everything for the livestock, is definitely a segment that's growing and in demand. So there is areas where these people can grow. And I know there's a lot of vendors that are retiring out of that industry. So again, there's a whole segment that we need new blood in. So for these kids, if they can learn some of this stuff and expand, that'd be fantastic. I think that'd be a great area someone could really get into and really hone their skills and really promote for themselves.
It's a perfect example. Oh, go ahead, Molly.
Yeah, we've looked at that. That's really like ag engineering.
Yeah.
And so it's something that we've certainly talked about and looked at, and certainly VTC has a strong presence in engineering in general, whether it's mechanical or electrical. And this whole ag engineering piece has come up through this year-long planning process. So there's definitely conversations of what that could look like.
Well, and I would say, I'm sorry, Regina. Go ahead,
Pat.
Well, and we do have an element within our dairy farm management program now, where they do look at barn construction and energy efficiency, well, not so much energy efficiency, but that does seem, Jill, as though an opportunity, particularly when you look at our renewable energy, our architectural engineering, our ag programs, how do we put that all together? So and the ag engineering piece, as Molly mentions, is compelling. I think those are areas that we need to keep on the radar for consideration as we build this program and for subsequent phases as well. So yes, excellent point.
Yeah,
I was just going to say it's a perfect
Kristen.
example of what we were describing too, around if you have a student that is interested in agriculture and in engineering, to be able to come in, be advised when they arrive, this is what my interest is. How can I achieve this? We'd say, well, we can take some engineering classes. Yes, you can take agriculture classes. Yes, we can send you off to an internship with a business that very much reflects the kind of work you'd like to do. But the ability to both give them that core education, but also to individualize to their particular needs, I think is going to be a real strength and a good example of what you just described. If we're able to do that without creating a major that we have to populate with a certain number of students, but can really make it fluid. Because one of the things we were talking about yesterday that Sarah talked about in her introduction around farm succession and putting people into businesses and onto farms, they can't just, what's the pathway if they start by taking some courses in high school and they get their associate's degree and they have an apprenticeship, or they go on for a 2+2 bachelor's degree, or what is the particular pathway that individual student needs to be able to be successful then to get to the place where they'd like to be in their career, whether it's on a property or with a business. So I think that's part of the whole drive behind these recommendations.
Well, and keeping in mind too, that when we are Vermont State University and we bring in the resources at Castleton and Northern Vermont University, I mean, there's going to be additional choices students have in their curriculum, and there may be programs there that are attractive to our ag students and vice versa. Certain ag programs that are going to be attractive to those students. The geography piece we need to figure out, but there's a lot of planning obviously going on that unification, but trying to figure out how we can really enable students to have more choices, both within a declared major, or especially if they're undeclared and want to explore a lot of different options. So there's going to be a lot more distance learning opportunities, but also we think opportunities for students from other campuses to come here, whether it be for a semester or whatever the case might be. The other thing I want to mention too is we talked a lot about really extending the academic year. I mean, here we have an ag program and we don't teach anything in the summer. And when does stuff grow? In the summer. So it's, the expansion of our calendar, the expansion of summer opportunities. These are looking at January term, where you can fill in some blanks. These are all options that are currently on the table and being considered as we look at the new university, but also as we look at our revision of this program.
And I would say one thing, I feel like a lot of the feedback I'm hearing is like this, from many of you that are employers, is this workforce need. And are there really degrees that exist now that really fit what we're seeing for the future for workforce needs? And I think that's where a lot of the studies and conversations have been going in the last few years is no, not really. And so how do we meet those needs? And I think that's where developing this center that we're talking about is really, we've tried to develop that in a way that's nimble and innovative and set up to be able to be fluid and meet those needs. And part of that is by having the arm that delivers like trainings and short courses, and then how those can feed into degree programs. So when I'm hearing people talk about, well, we need these skills in the workforce, sometimes that's not a full degree or sometimes it is. And so by having a center that can sort of train people with where it is that they need, what they need to enter the workforce, I think is a huge goal of where we're going at with these recommendations in this center.
That's an excellent point, Molly. And, just where is it a short-term course? Where is it a certificate? Where do we need to go to a group degree? I mean, to your point, Beth, there may be things, you may not need somebody who comes out with an associate degree, but you might need somebody who is well-versed in a variety of different topics that doesn't take all the length of a 2-year associate's degree. So but you're right, Molly. I mean, the point of the center is to give us that nimbleness that we can be responsive and look at all these different options.
Yeah, and so those that are on today who, when you have ideas, you're hearing this conversation and it could be inspirational and well, this is what actually we need. I mean, right now we are still very much in the receiving information process from people. And so we want to hear those things from you. So, please send those our way so that we can think about them as we're developing these.
Yeah, and I think, we know that the current program's got challenges, but we also know there's demand. So, we're still very fluid and open to consideration. We've got a path we're headed down, but also want to make sure that we're considering the other needs of the industry and the various sectors as we plan this. So that's an element of the market research. And I should mention also, Andy, I forgot to mention that we did go to, we have had an arrangement with EAB, which is Education Advisory Board, that does a market research into programs for us. And they did some research into our existing program and weren't horribly optimistic on that, but had said that they thought some of the new programming had better opportunities, but they didn't feel that it was necessary to go back and do a slew of additional investigation. But that report was helpful in terms of pointing us in certain directions, but it's not really the market research that I think you're envisioning, that I still think is an opportunity for us to, is something we need to keep on the radar, as I mentioned.
And I would just offer too, and part of how all of you can help is, we have to create some serious buzz, and not just for Vermont Tech, but, to Kristen, your point, and to UVM and Sterling College, like as Vermont being a center of training and education and workforce development in the ag and food sector, to go along with the expansion of our food system. We've, as you guys know, through all these years of monitoring and being part of Farm to Plate, we have, expanded 6,500 net new jobs in the food system in the last 10 years. And so, we can't keep growing the number of jobs if there aren't people to fill them, right? So, we've shown now that the food system is expanding, and there's more initiatives than ever over the next 10 years that are going to be happening as the implementation of the new statewide plan happens. And as I've been working a lot with my New England counterparts in the other 5 states to get their food systems moving. So as those things all start picking up, we're going to need a huge number of students, and we've got to find them. And if we can't find them on existing dairy farms, which has been the tradition of Vermont Tech anyways, then we need to be looking not only for throughout every single CTE and every school in the state, and really be holding up the opportunity for this kind of education in Vermont, but also we need to get outside our borders. And so I think that, especially given how costly marketing is, if we could figure out some way of pooling resources across all the educational institutions in the state that have some kind of ag or food element, and be able to really start getting that out there in a more coordinated way about, come to Vermont. And then if you want a liberal arts education, you can do St. Mike's, you can do UVM. If you want real hands-on 2-year technical, you come to Vermont Tech, or you go to Vermont Sterling, or you go to Sterling College, where we can really talk about all those different options. And to the extent to which there are articulation agreements between the colleges where students could be shared. So, just like the 2+2 program for dairy, why not an opportunity to do Vermont Tech for 2 years and then go on to St. Mike's College, if not UVM, So I think the point here is we can figure out anything we need to figure out. We just got to come together and make it so, and really have to start waving that flag, or as the folks in Hardwick do, plant the flag and say, Hardwick is the place to be. Well, Vermont is the place to be for ag and food system education. So get your butts here and get enrolled and take advantage of this incredible opportunity to get educated and immediately have a job upon graduation. I mean, that's the bottom line here. Vermont Tech graduates and places every single kid that comes through their store. So there is no reason to believe, given how expanded the food system is, that that's not also going to be possible for us, and I really think it will. So I noticed we're getting close to time here. I did notice that there is another question. Catherine, do you wanna come online and say it?
Yeah, it's not really a question. It's more of just a response to some of the marketing pieces, kind of a follow up to what Molly had said. Yeah, I think that when I was talking earlier, it was a little bit more maybe that more traditional student might not benefit from the marketing aspects like immediately within like a traditional kind of curriculum, but that I think that if there's so many one-off workshops on marketing and market readiness, and I think that people really struggle to get cohesive messaging around that or know what they need to know. And I really see that as something that like we are missing. And I understand that maybe it's not in the complete like package of what VTC or the state colleges are looking to offer, but I think it would be a missed opportunity not to incorporate something around that, even if it was focused on existing businesses, because you're kind of talking about placing people with processors maybe who are doing those things well, but I think that there's a lot of people who are really successful businesses, but they are still lacking in being able to get to that next level and market out of state and market regionally. And I think that's something that is a really important component of keeping Vermont small businesses thriving, is through that, like, we have these niche specialty products that are amazing, but we still have to compete on the regional and national scale. And I think it would be short-sighted not to really keep that in mind, kind of going forward with ag.
Yeah, no, thank you, Catherine. It's really dead on. And I was thinking back, Regina and Molly and Pat, to our earliest conversations when the Culture and Curriculum committee team did this sort of like, well, what do we do now that works well? And then what does the market need? What are the skills that are needed? What's the educational training that is really needed? And so much of what the group dialed in on was that need for business acumen, understanding financials, being able to do enterprise analysis, understanding marketing and sales, understanding supply chain logistics, being able to be market savvy, meaning understanding consumer trends and knowing how to pivot. And so that would take advantage of, that would mean learning about online marketing and online sales. Those kinds of things just haven't been part of the core of what students have been, in part because the traditional Vermont Tech student has been from a conventional dairy farm where it's primarily about milk production, and you've got your co-op that does all of that marketing and balancing and all of that. And so, you know, we had focus group sessions with a number of food manufacturers that talked about, look, it's all about food safety. Get me people who are trained in food safety, right? Because this is the evolving nature of the food system. And so how can Vermont Tech position itself as being that place, as we've said, sort of nimble, able to be really responsive to where the needs are, where we don't get locked in to a lot of infrastructure and a lot of that we have to do it this way. Like, we're really about how do we break things up and be much more nimble and adaptive. And that's where the short courses comes in. That's where the internships come in. That's where summer and J-term comes in. But then we still have that really strong core that you can count on that is fundamental for any type of farm or food business that you need to have.
And at the end of the day, it depends on a consistent feedback loop from all of you out in the industry and in the field to be able to say, this is what we're seeing, this is what we need to know now. That was the consistent feedback. As Ellen said, we got that the complexity of the farm and food system has grown substantially over the last decade. So as that continues to evolve, we need to hear from all of you. What are the skills, not only that new students need to have, but some of your existing employees or you yourself might need to have in order to continue to compete?
Molly, did you want to jump in on that?
No, I was just thinking, yeah, and I think what Catherine shared is very helpful, and we should look at how to incorporate that, and we will. And I think in addition to that, you know, what we're all talking about is, yeah, I think the food system's changing, what the skills that are needed are changing. And the interesting thing about Vermont Tech, and Regina alluded to this too, is that we have in varying departments all these different options for kids. You know, we're a college that offers welding, we're a college that offers how to rig hydraulics and diesel mechanics. So like from that to food safety trainings to even electrical engineering, I mean, we do offer the gamut of skills needed. It's really just figuring out how to package them and best deliver them for students.
So, Kristen, if you don't mind, I want to give Dave the chance to ask a question, and then if we have time, we'll pop over to you. Dave, you want to ask your question, because we're getting close to time here.
Yeah, thank you. It's less a question than an observation. I think there's no shortage of folks who would like to get into agriculture and make a living in agriculture. I think what they very often need is to understand how the business world out there is pretty unforgiving and complex. Yeah. And if whether you're growing carrots or sheep, that's great. But how do you get those products out and marketed? And how do you track your expenses and find employees? All those things that you need to understand all that. And I think that's a good role for Vermont Tech and the colleges, because I don't think there's a lack of people who want to get into agriculture. I think it's the lack of information on how to be successful in agriculture. And I think that's a key. Thank you.
Great.
An excellent point, Dave. Excellent point. Yep.
So, Kristen, we've got just a minute left. Go ahead.
No, just so Molly kind of left off where I was going with my line of questioning, and Dave kind of capitalized on it. I think that students need the certificate language and the short course language and the degree language is really conflated and not clear for the undergraduate student. And I think that the certificate programs need to be stacked in such a way that they lead to a major or minor. Yes. Students can see, families, not students, frankly, families can see that academic trajectory and that completion of the degree, which is what they're paying for. Then the students need the tool of the certificate language, the short course language, the skills and experience to land on their resume in an authentic way to then take to future employers. And that is the power of the structure of centers where you're keeping up with the industry. And those centers are helping disseminate and distinguish the academic program. So I think that language, everybody's using it. We just need to do some work around stewarding the student through what that map looks like.
Yeah, we agree, because there are a lot of students too who don't see themselves as college material, but they might be willing to take a course or a training. And if you put enough of those together, then look, you've already got this many credits perhaps that are on your, and then people see themselves as a potential student. So there's all kinds of pathways.
And you have the value, to Beth's points earlier, you have the value in that short course structure to also have some, you know, employee from somewhere in the world of agriculture say, hey, I want to brush up on my, you know, chicken cutting skills or something like that. Have that value added student, but you have your core students too.
Yep. Great. Well, thank you so very much. We are at time. A big thank you to President Pat Moulton and to Regina Beidler and to Molly Willard. Thank you to all of you. Really good communication, good just shaking it up, and good ideas, good back and forth. Really, really appreciate you being here and sharing your good ideas. And just a reminder, we have a 15-minute break, and please, please, please do come back, because we have the big reveal on the local food counts, and that is followed then by a really going to be extremely fascinating, interesting panel on dairy from dairy farmers, their voices. representing a range of different dairy farm experiences. And so we really want to make sure that everybody is present for that as well. Very, very important to our state. So thank you so very much for your interest. Thanks for being here, and please be ambassadors for us.
Yes, thank you all very, very much.
And